What's actually in the book? An emergency gift. Imagine receiving a map of the universe that explains where we came from, why we exist, and where consciousness goes after death. The fifth revelation claims to provide exactly that. It describes a universe populated by millions of inhabited worlds, governed by a vast spiritual administration, and it introduces the idea that every human being carries a fragment of God within them. And it reframes our planetary history, not as the story of a fallen race, but as the story of a world recovering from rebellion. So tell us, Derek, what's in it into this emergency gift that we have?
That's right. So, I think we need to remember this analogy that we've been using when we're talking about the different dispensational bestowals of the light of truth with all of these people that we're talking about, these sons of God, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
the analogy I'm using is blowing up the balloon a little bit
Yeah,
more every time, right?
the stages.
So,
Yeah.
stages, right? Um, So the first one, obviously, we get this very basic presentation of truth. We're obviously still very primitive people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they only share with us a certain level of cosmology, probably that there's inhabited planets in our general area, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. It would be a local system of planets, maybe. When
Mm-hmm.
Adam and Eve come, they blow up the balloon a little bit more and they talk about how many different systems there might be of planets and how they
Yeah.
coalesce into what's called a constellation, which is another grouping, but it's just another step higher and there's more to understand. So we're blowing out that balloon even more.
Mm-hmm.
That unfortunately was forgotten. So when Macaventa came, he had to reteach everybody that.
Yeah.
So when he was referring to God, he called God the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the designation that we have for the rulers of a constellation,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
When Jesus came, he skipped over all of the other levels of organization and cosmology, and he taught us about a personal relationship we can directly have straight up to the universal Father.
So he jumped up from this basic progressive. He really sped up everything for us in a way.
That's right. And that's going to come in, and that's going to be a really important part of this discussion, I think. So, and now this fifth breath, I called it, this breath
Mm-hmm.
of truth onto the planet, is blowing it up even more to an absolutely extraordinary scale. And
Okay.
I have an actual opinion as to why that is, and I'll tell you about that in a sec. Um, as you mentioned, and I believe this very strongly, this is an emergency intervention. And we talked about the idea that Peter made this mistake at Pentecost and started focusing on who Jesus is more than what Jesus taught. And that
Mm-hmm.
created another one of these tangents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Paul came along and he introduced a lot of Jewish theology based around sin and sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now we've got this crisis again, and we got to get things going back towards the
Mm-hmm.
norm. So basically, what the information given in this fifth revelation is expansive, blowing up the balloon, and corrective. So it's I you can boil it down to those two functions. There's a little bit more, but so what does it correct? Let's talk about what it corrects, and then we'll talk about what it expands. Okay, so we talked about this already. There was no fall of man. The default was a failure of Adam and Eve, our divine parents or administrators at the time. They're divine beings sent to the planet for a very specific purpose, dispensational, a bestowal of truth. It was not us. We did not fall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Exactly.
a very, very
There's
strong
no
theme.
original sin.
Yeah,
There is no, we do not come tainted. And this is something that was really liberating afterwards when you realize
yes,
that it's really, and that you are responsible. And that's one of the contradictions that I always never understood. Why do I have an original sin that I'm not responsible for? And then you're teaching me that I'm responsible for my actions. I don't get it. So
that's
this is
right.
oh, okay, now it makes sense. It's these people. And, imagine when you tell a story to a couple of friends, how distorted it gets within a couple of days. Imagine
Exactly.
2,000 years,
Exactly. Yeah.
more than 2,000
Exactly.
years, all this time. Anyway, so
Exactly.
you were saying,
So yeah,
Jared.
so no original sin. The information that we have gives us the full history behind what happened and who, what, why, when, and where, and it helps us understand. And that knowledge is incredibly liberating, and it just gives us a power.
Mm-hmm.
It's empowering, right? To have
Yes.
that understanding and to actually to know what really happened, so that we don't have these
These
things
shackles.
foisted upon us.
Yeah.
Shackles, exactly. Yeah. Um, Another correction: there is no God is unchangeless, right? So this schizophrenic view of God in the Bible between the Old Testament and the New Testament is not a description of the nature of God. It's actually a chronicle of the history of our understanding of the nature of God. It's
It's
not
human.
God.
It's
Yes,
human.
God is changeless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so big difference. So there's
Yeah.
before, and that's why it's so significant before Jesus and after Jesus, because it's that distinct of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So God is not this jealous, wrathful national deity of the Old Testament. God is
That
so
requires a
much more.
sacrifice of his own kin in order
Yeah,
to suffice. That's,
yeah,
if you look at it, that's very, I was born and raised in Mexico. You look at the pre-Hispanic sacrifices, blood sacrifice,
yeah,
that's more akin to that, to really a loving God, it
yeah.
doesn't make sense, you
No,
know?
absolutely.
All right.
So big correction there. Another correction is that the Lucifer rebellion is actually a real thing. It actually happened,
Yeah.
and that's why we are so messed up.
And
Um, eh,
let me, because this is important, and I think it's one of the truths that you get from the UB that really, unshackles you, let's say.
yeah,
A lot of what we, and this is not just Christianity, but, world religions throughout to this point, teaches that there's a balance between good and evil.
yeah,
But really, God and everything encompasses both potential for evil and good, and that's the difference. So there is potential for that. It doesn't need to be actually there. So it's not God that really is fighting against evil and has a balance. It has to sort out his power with the devil. God is beyond that. God is overarching, and
yeah,
that's why I love Star Wars and the concept of the Force, because it overarches everything. And you do
yeah,
have the people that wield the dark side and the ones that do wield the bright side, and that's
yeah,
a balance. But God is that. God is everywhere. But you have this potential for these individuals to do evil, and this is where we're at. So
yeah,
there's no devil and there's no contention for our souls in that sense, and in the classical sense. But there is this conflict, this rebellion that has consequences, that has brought us to a lot of misguided and evil in the world.
yes, yes. I think it's also important to say that in order for you to be able to choose good,
Yeah.
you also have to be able to choose evil.
Yes. Definitely. The
Otherwise,
potential.
there's no choice. There's no choice,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these individuals actually are real people. Lucifer's like a real person. Well, no person, but being,
A being. Yeah.
divinely created being. Caligaster, we talked about him. All of these people, Satan, Beelzebub, they're all real individuals that took part in this rebellion, and we remember them through our mythology.
Mm-hmm.
It's survived in our mythology, and you know, un- after Jesus, all of these ideas of demonic forces and what's it called? Can't
Possessions?
remember. Thank you. Yeah, possessions and all that kind of stuff. After Jesus, like it's all just it's not true. Before Jesus, that kind of stuff actually did happen
Yeah.
because um, there's a lot more rebels on the planet at that time, but they
They
were
they
all
were
removed.
afforded more
Yeah,
more faculties, let's say. They could
Yeah,
do some more stuff. That when
yeah,
Jesus came to settle things, they
yeah,
were retired all those leeways, right?
exactly. And I wrote a paper several years ago that actually um, coincidentally proves all of that they were
Okay.
removed, and it's basically, I'm not going to remember his name now, but it was the high priest at the temple of Delphi, and he was
Okay.
the guy in charge of the Delphic oracle, right?
Okay.
And the oracle was who everybody used to go to
Yeah.
ask questions of the gods and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. One of the things that I was interested in researching at the time was, once the rebels, this is way back in the Lucifer Rebellion time, once all of his rebels had died, the people who had gone over with him, the Anunnaki who had gone over with him, once they had died, how was Caligastia actually able to manipulate and control events on the planet?
Okay.
Because he didn't have actual people around anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how would he do that? And then it hit me. Well, rebel midwayers acting
Exactly.
acting acting through
Behind the
oracles.
scenes. Yeah. Yeah.
No, they were actually acting through oracles, right?
Okay.
And so this priest, and I wish I remembered his name, but it's in the article. I can share it with you if you want.
All right.
This is around maybe 100, 200 AD. So this is just, generally speaking, just after Jesus left and
Mm-hmm.
the rebels were removed. They were having a massive crisis in the ancient world because all of the oracles had gone silent, and they didn't
Really?
know what
I did not know
to
this.
do. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's actually recorded. It's a writing called "On the Cessation of the Oracles."
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I'll share the information with you if you
That's
want to look
interesting
into it
because
more.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
cutting off all this information. And by the way, next segment, and this is just so that you continue watching this. I think next segment I have an opinion on what happened with the two guys that were left here. But anyway, so
Oh, I
let's
can I want to hear that. I do. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So
continue.
moving on. So we talked about all the things that have been corrected, and there's a lot more that's been corrected, but those are like some of the really main ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what's new though? Like how has our balloon really, really been blown up? Okay. Now this goes back to what Jesus taught. Like I was talking before about Jesus skipping over a whole bunch of levels for us, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
came and he taught us about this personal relationship that we can have directly with the universal Father, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he gave us this direct connection and this personal relationship, but he skipped all of the stuff in between.
Mm-hmm.
And what we get in the Urantia papers is all the stuff in between. It fills in that gap, and it tells us exactly all of the levels and how it all works. He taught us that the Father is within us, and which is the basis for the idea of the divine fragments that indwell us. They come from the universal Father.
Yeah.
So how can you talk about the divine fragments without describing and explaining where the
And that's the
universal
thing.
Father is, right?
Of course, I mean, if this makes sense, Derek, if you're saying
Yeah,
that Jesus skipped all this in intermediate content just to bring us, because it was an emergency dispensation, then we need to fill that out so that it makes sense, and then
yeah,
things can move forward.
yeah.
Definitely.
And
Okay.
that realization for me really answered a pressing question that I've had for 30 years of reading this book is, why have we been given so much information out of step of what we're supposed to be getting? And that answers it. Like we were given this straight direct line to the universal Father and how we can have that. And then now it has to be filled in, how like the in between of all of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
The
So
the point, interesting, because I mean, and we're going to get to into this later, but what we're concluding is that this planet is very special. And I have an analogy, or I have an image, and I think I've shared it before, but the way that I view this is that, the universe is a melody. It's a music, and we can talk about it later in the Song of the Ainur and everything that, how
Whoa.
everything plays out, everything. But, music and the way that music is built, the structures of perfection in time and how everything is. I mean, music, and if you analyze it, you have, certain faculties that of expression, but it has to be within a certain structure. You can't play within a harmonic part as something that is disharmonic. There's certain notes that you cannot play because that's going to cause dissonance. So as
Yeah.
long as you know that, you have certain creative expression within that. So let's have that context and everything that's playing out in the universe with a song. So we're part of that song, and let's say that the harmony is being played and we're part of that melody that is being played. So
Yeah.
imagine that song of the universe is being played, and the planet, it's in a record player. Remember the old LP record players? Imagine that this planet, I believe, is that needle point, that has to be
Yeah.
really, really, really strong, really, really
Yeah.
tough in order to be able to play that
Yeah.
music of the universe. So let's
Whoa.
see that this planet has that special function as the
Yeah.
one that is playing the song because if you look at it, this is where Jesus bestowed. This is where everything is happening. This is where the rebellion was quenched. So this is the certain center stage of all the music of our universe. Anyways, continue, please,
I
Derek. I
like
wanted to
that.
throw
I
that in.
like that.
Yeah,
And the other thing about that is, um, with all of this in between information that we're talking about, is, and it's really hard to wrap your head around, but you get some idea of just how absolutely immense and uncomprehensibly immense God actually is. And I think I was watching one of your earlier episodes with Don Clementine,
yeah, yeah,
and he spoke about that, and it really, really like got me right there. Like he was saying, God is so big in the Urantia book that it actually scared me for a
yeah.
little while.
He
And
actually
then,
said that he felt
yeah,
ashamed of praying. He
yes, he
wasn't
did.
worthy of,
Yeah.
of praying to God.
Yeah,
It's
because we're
interesting
so small. We're so small. But then he came back, and I think it's important to say this because, like, that's kind of freaky, right? But
yeah,
he said, that's why Jesus came,
yeah.
because Jesus basically shows us that connection we can have with the
That
Father.
nature of the
Yeah.
Father.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so
So that
beautiful.
that
Yeah,
really, like, that's worth repeating. That was really something that just seriously got me right there. Yeah.
yeah. I think
But
that really got a lot of people. But yeah,
yeah,
it's true.
yeah. So, other things that it has added to our understanding of reality as a whole is, life after death. Okay, well, what does that mean? Do we like become angels and
And
go
play a harp.
play a harp and go to a 1950s nightclub and sip martinis, or like what do we do, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
it lays this whole ascension career out for us. It's a
Career.
career, and
Let's make that word a stick out. Career.
it's something we do not become perfected beings when we die.
Mm-mm.
What's the point,
Yeah.
right?
We
Um,
the first stage, which is human. We have to learn about so many other things.
that's right. Yeah. So people say, well, why couldn't God just make us perfect? Like some people ask that. That's a question a lot of people ask. And my answer to that, based on the Urantia book, is, well, God actually already did that. He created a central universe, perfect universe full of perfect beings. He's already done that.
Yeah.
We're not part of that adventure. We're part of a completely different adventure where we are perfected beings, except for the imposition of time,
Hmm.
wherein we can gain experience, which is the only thing that you can add to perfection.
I love that. I love
Perfected.
that.
How can you add to perfection? The only way that you can add to a perfected or a perfectly created being is experience, and that's only something that can be had through time.
Through the imperfection of time, which is what I like
Yeah.
to always say is the
Yeah.
potential to the actual. And
Yeah.
that's why we have these two poles, the good and evil,
Yeah.
and for us to choose. And it's always, and that's part of the mechanism, of course, of what we as in this second stage, as you're saying, of beings that are imperfect going into perfection, that
Yeah.
need the dispensation or the tool of time, where and I love this, and that's why I liked so much, and I worked so much with the Mayans, that they have a formula, and they say time equals art, and that's the basis of their cosmology. Time equals art. So because everything will become art, everything will be perfect. So time will turn everything perfect.
Oh, love it. And that's
Yes.
exactly what it is.
That's,
That's what it
I mean,
is.
we're going to have to talk a lot about that, because it takes it into a very practical pattern that you can
Yeah.
understand. And I call it the wave of time, because as you can understand, how patterns and motions work, it's like waves. How do surfers surf? It's not that they go into the ocean. It just they know the patterns. They know how it's going to happen, why, how, when, where, and how to get on top of the wave and not under the wave. And
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
same thing. Is if
Yeah.
you understand the patterns of the universe and of life, then you can be on top of the wave, and you can take use of that force, because it's a force basically. You use that force to potentialize and leverage your own force and your own potential. So interesting stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's just, I want to talk about that for the next 40 minutes now.
Oh, of course, of course. Well,
But yeah,
that's going to be,
but
a series in
yeah.
itself, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So,
So where are we?
basically, based on what we've been saying, it's pretty clear that there is a massive ascension career. I
Yeah.
mean, the question of what do you do with eternity? Eternity is an incredibly long time. Like, you don't just sit there in a heavenly nightclub sipping martinis. There is a career, there is a purpose, there is stuff that we do, and it is all completely laid out.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, yeah, and I'm so excited. Like, it's a terrible thing to say, but I am really, really looking forward to dying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good thing. It takes out the uncertainty, and what the hell. I have a good life. I have if I'm here surrounded by loving people, family and everything. I don't want to go over there to a nightclub in heaven and just be sipping martinis. I want to be with my
Yeah,
friends. You will be. There
it's
will be
exciting.
all that. So
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's really
yeah.
comforting as well.
And that's the other thing, is that knowing all of this, like what happens in the afterlife, and it's really laid out in detail, at least the first few stages for us. Like, it really lays it out for us, so that you can really dig into it. But you
Yeah.
see that it's not an afterlife. And then I've said that a few times in this series, that I don't see it as an afterlife. It's all one
A
life, right?
continuum. It's a
So,
continuum.
so a lot of Urantians actually don't refer to death as passing away or dying. We call it graduation,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's kind of what it really is.
You
Death
you
is
leave
no
this
more than
stage. Yeah.
a means of transcending to the next stage. That's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
so that's like a huge thing for us, like, because there's so much fear on this planet, this fear of, especially fear of death and the unknown, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
understanding what death actually is and knowing the unknown part about what comes after, again, incredibly liberating and empowering.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think that kind of gives us what is in there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the Urantia book we can to keep on talking about
Yeah.
what it sets straight, about
Yeah.
the dispensation of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
All right,
I agree. Yeah.
perfect. So
So,
and we're going to close here and ready for
yeah.
the next part, which is really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. So stay tuned. Now we're going to talk of what's in it to come. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.